The news day continues here on One News Now Business. I'm Diego Castro. Here are the biggest stories on the economic and corporate fronts. Finance Secretary Diokno defends the budget allocation for servicing the national debt under the proposed 2024 budget. According to the Finance Department, 699.2 billion pesos will be allocated to service the national debt. The allocation is equivalent to about 12.1% of the entire 5.768 trillion proposed budget for the year 2024. In an interview with A Big Story, Diokno clarifies that the allocation only covers the annual interest of the loans and not the amortization. The finance chief adds that the latest allocation is far better compared to those of previous years.
The amortization is not part of the budget because that has already been used. It's only the interest payment that is part of the budget. And interest payment, as you showed earlier, as a percent of the budget, was in the neighborhood of 11 to 12%. I've served 4 presidents, and it used to be 1/3 of the budget is for interest payments alone. So this is a major improvement.
House Deputy Speaker Ralph Recto initially said the next year's record high 5.767 trillion peso budget will force the government to incur more debts. By his calculation, the government will be spending approximately 15.8 billion pesos a day, but only 11.7 billion will be covered by taxes. According to Recto, this means the remaining 4 billion will have to be funded by borrowings every 24 hours. The country's trade-in goods deficit narrowed for a third consecutive month in June. Preliminary data from the PSA shows that the country's trade balance now stands at a deficit of $3.92 billion in June. The latest figure is slimmer than the $4.45 billion gap in May and the $5.88 billion deficit in June 2022. The balance of trade in goods has been in deficit for over 8 years. Data from the PSA shows that imports in June contracted to a 3-year low. Exports, on the other hand, were flat as global demand for goods weakened. The Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs is citing several talks allegedly held with the Philippines on the ownership of Ayungin Shoal. In a statement, China said the Philippines ran BRP Sierra Madre aground in May of 1999 and then refused to tow the vessel away on the pretext of lack of parts. Then in 2003, China allegedly got wind of Philippines' plans to build facilities around BRP Sierra Madre, to which they immediately protested. They added that the Philippines declared that it had no intentions to construct facilities in the Ayungin Shoal. But despite this, the vessel still wasn't towed away. The National Security Council had earlier denied China's claims of any agreement to remove the BRP Sierra Madre. The Foreign Affairs Department also maintained that the Chinese Coast Guard impeded the Philippines' legitimate activities in its own exclusive economic zone, and reiterated that China was in violation of the UN Convention on the Laws of the Sea, or UNCLOS. For his part, Philippine Coast Guard spokesperson for the West Philippine Sea, J. Tariela, challenged Beijing to provide proof of their claims. We'll be back with more stories after the break. Keep it here on One News. You're still watching One News Now. I'm Diego Castro. Joblessness among Filipinos saw a slight increase for the month of June. Data from the PSA shows that the country's unemployment rate stood at 4.5% in June, or about 2.33 million jobless Filipinos. The latest figure is slightly higher than the 4.3% or 2.17 million jobless Filipinos in May. However, it is an improvement from the 6% log in the same month of last year. Underemployment also climbed month-on-month to 12% in June. That's equivalent to 5.87 Filipinos looking to work longer hours or seeking additional jobs. The June figure is slightly higher than the 11.7% in May, but lower still than the 12.6% in the same month last year. PSA data shows that the services sector continues to make up most of the labor force. This is followed by the agriculture sector and then the industry sector. A group of supermarket operators says the recent wage hike is also a factor in manufacturers' requests for price hikes for certain goods. At least 13 manufacturers of basic goods are asking the Trade Department for price increases for 43 shelf-keeping units. Trade Undersecretary Ruth Castello said this includes goods such as canned sardines and meat, powdered and evaporated milk, as well as coffee and bottled water. According to Castello, food manufacturers want a 1 to 5% price increase or up to 7 pesos. For non-food items, manufacturers are seeking a price increase of 6 to 7% or up to almost 10 pesos. Companies initially cited high raw material costs, especially those being imported, as a reason for such a request. The Philippine Amalgamated Supermarkets Association tells Radio 5's Failon that the request price hikes will also help cover costs for increase in workers' wages. The group explains, though, that manufacturers are still careful not to raise prices too much so it will not affect consumption.
Because of the salary increase, no, lahat ng industriya tatamaan yan. Siyempre, hindi lang manufacturing. Kasi siyempre, how do you cover the increase in salaries? Pag tumaas ka, baka mabawasan ang market share mo. Baka. Diba? So, ingat na ingat ang manufacturers kung mag-adjust ang presyo, not in a way na mabawasan ang market share nila.
One transport group is looking to increase the minimum fare to up to 15 pesos if the LTFRB does not approve the requested rush hour surcharge. Pasang Mazda has filed a petition in the LTFRB seeking additional fare of 1 to 2 pesos during rush hours, following several weeks of consecutive oil price hikes. But the agency said that this might not be approved and that a one-time fare increase might be a better solution.
Yung sa kanilang sinasabing surge fee ay mahihirapan po kami riyan kasi hindi mo naman matansya talaga kung anong oras sumakay yung tao at saka kung anong oras siya bababa. What we're looking into right now is a one-time na increase in the fare, which is a more logical possibility.
The Liga ng Transportasyon at Operators sa Pilipinas, or LTOP, agrees with the LTFRB. The group is eyeing to increase the minimum fare to up to 15 pesos, citing both oil price hikes and pricier basic commodities.
Sa amin po, doon sa base, doon sa price increase ng fuel, bali 2 pesos na po yung allowed na pwede nang itaas na pamasahe. Pero kung isasama namin ang mga prime commodities na napakabigat, ay bali yung mga papasok na po tayo doon sa 15 pesos na po ang minimum.
Truckers are some of the most affected by the combined impact of recent oil price hikes and the imposition of toll fees at the NLEX-SLEX connector road. Here to talk to us about their situation, we have Confederation of Truckers Association of the Philippines President Maria Zapata. Good morning, ma'am. Thank you very much for joining us on One News Now this morning.
Okay, good morning, Mr. Diego, and to all your listeners.
Thank you, ma'am.
Morning.
Yeah, let's get right to it, no? How big po is the impact of the recent oil price hikes? Sunod-sunod po yan. And of course, toll fees on your operations.
Well, yung increases natin ng petroleum products na yun ang heavily na ginagamit namin, in 2 weeks' time, it is more or less 7 pesos and 50 cents. And that is equivalent to 14% of the previous petroleum price, especially the crudo. So medyo malaki ang impact na yan, and probably we cannot avoid by not asking our principal, our importer, our
Yes.
clients, and our exporter for an increase of the tracking rate.
Ah,
Kasi hindi naman, you will notice and you observe in the past na pagka tumaas
yes.
ang petroleum products, hindi lang naman yun ang tumataas. Susunod na dyan yung other commodities like yesa, like gulong, yung lahat ng kailangan namin on the transport activities tumataas. So talagang the consideration is really from our principal,
Yes.
and that is what we are doing right now, trying to communicate and trying to explain, and probably what we are expecting is it will not be hard on our side convince them because it is very, very open in the news, in all medium na talagang lahat ay nagre-request ng increases.
Kung napabigyan po ang increase sa request nyo po sa tracking rate, paano po ito makaka-apekto sa consumers?
Well, all of this, it will be just passed on. So the increase that we will be requesting and it will be granted to us, of course, additional expansion on the part of the manufacturer, on the part of the importer, or on the part of the exporter. So they will just pass on. So lahat yan affected tayo. Yung since ang Pilipinas kasi is an importing country.
Yes.
Import dependent tayo. So lahat yan tataas. Lahat yan tataas. And tayong lahat na consumer, lahat tayo maapektuhan. Hindi lang kami na tracker, hindi lang kami na involved sa transport, but everybody who is a consumer.
Yes, and in the meantime po, nawala pa yung, I suppose wala pa yung tugon about the request for the increase of the toll price, of yung trucking fee nyo. What action po ang kailangan gawin or necessary para mais naman po ang burden ng truckers natin? Like, for example po, you think the toll hike should have been postponed muna given the oil price increases? At if ever po, any form of assistance kailangan?
Well, that initiative should be coming from the government, no? We cannot do anything about it, especially on the toll fee hike. It was approved by the TRB, and it is a government action. So we cannot do probably anything, no? But yung connector, yung in-implement ng NLEX,
Yes.
very recent, I think this week lang, yun naman ay matagal na namin ginagamit for quite some time,
Yes.
several months. And it was allowed for us to use for free. Alam mo naman yan, investment din yan, hanap buhay din yan ng NLEX. So it is but the normal for them to recover on whatever investment they put on in the project.
And malaking epekto ba ito po yung binanggit nyo, yung connector? No? I think this is the Espanya-Santa Mesa segment. Tama po ba yan, ma'am?
Yes.
Oo.
The good thing is that, having that, yung traffic na na-i-incur namin sa ilalim, of course, pag kami dumaan sa taas, mas mabilis ang aming action. So, yung consumption namin ng diesel, it's much, much lower kaysa sa doon sa consumption namin na naghihintay kami ng traffic sa baba. So, in a way, parang win-win solution yun.
So in other words, ma'am, ang last question na po, no, sinasabi nyo, even if magkaroon ng mangongolekta na po ng toll fee sa connector na yon, it's still better na doon po kayo dadaan kaysa makipagsabak po sa traffic na mas malaki ang konsumo sa gasolina.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, and thank you for your insights, ma'am, but unfortunately, that's all the time we have. We hope to talk to you soon. Thank you po for joining us. Confederation of Truckers Association of the Philippines, President Maria Zapata.
Thank you.
And those are the top business stories of the hour. I'm Diokno Castro. Join us again at 2 p.m. We are One News, all sides, all the time.